All right. Ever heard of a garage sale so big it spanned 11 time zones?
11 times.
Yeah, me neither.
Wow.
Until we until we started digging into this chapter you sent over from Contemporary World Politics. We're talking about the collapse of the Soviet Union, an
Right.
empire that went from global superpower to, well, history practically overnight.
Yeah.
We've got your textbook chapter here and that photo of the Berlin Wall you included. Powerful stuff.
Hmm.
Seeing that small hole chipped away, it really does make you wonder, how does something so seemingly solid just crumble?
It's a question historians wrestle with even today.
Yeah.
And this image of the Berlin Wall, it's not just a wall coming down. It's a system breaking apart.
Mm-hmm.
But to really get why we have to rewind a bit, understand the Soviet system itself, not just the dramatic ending.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1917, the Bolshevik Revolution, massive upheaval, promises of a workers' paradise, no more class struggle. Sounds almost too good to be true.
And in many ways it was. The Soviet Union was founded on this idea of equality. The government controlled everything to ensure everyone had the basics,
Right.
jobs, housing, healthcare.
Uh-huh.
On paper, it was supposed to be a utopia.
But utopia quickly ran into the reality of, well, how do you make a massive, diverse country actually run on those ideals?
Exactly. This centralized control that looked good on paper
Yeah.
ended up stifling individual freedom and creativity.
Right.
And while the West was taking off with technological advances, the Soviet Union started lagging behind. This wasn't just about missing out on the latest gadgets. It led to shortages of consumer goods, those infamous long lines for basic necessities.
And when people don't have bread, they're going to start asking questions.
Right.
Yeah.
You bet. But open dissent. That was risky business in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
So people got creative.
Okay.
Jokes, cartoons, even something as simple as a potato harvest became a way to express dissatisfaction.
Wait, what? How do you weaponize potatoes?
Picture this. A government official is questioning a farmer about his harvest.
Okay.
By the grace of God, the farmer says, we had mountains of potatoes this year. Now, the official was a staunch atheist,
Okay.
so he fires back, but there is no God. The farmer just shrugs and replies, and there are no mountains of potatoes either.
Okay, that's pretty clever. Subtle dig at the system, I like it. But this kind of hints at something bigger, doesn't it? It's not just about potatoes, it's about people finding ways to voice their discontent even when they can't speak openly. So we've got this undercurrent of discontent, shortages becoming a fact of daily life. What were the major stressors on the Soviet system that led to those shortages?
Well, imagine trying to keep up with the Joneses, but the Joneses have a limitless budget and a penchant for really expensive gadgets.
Yeah.
The arms race with the U.S. during the Cold War was a massive drain on the Soviet economy. They were pouring resources into trying to match the U.S. military might, missile for missile, tank for tank.
And I'm guessing that doesn't leave a lot of rubles left over for, say, upgrading tractor factories or making sure grocery stores are stocked.
You got it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just the arms race. They were also dealing with the burden of propping up their satellite states in Eastern Europe, many of which were struggling economically. Plus, let's not forget the internal challenges within the Soviet Union itself. 15 different republics, each with their own languages, cultures, and economic realities, all trying to be molded into one homogeneous system.
Okay, so the pressure is building, cracks are starting to show. This is where Gorbachev comes in, right? Tries to reform the system, introduce some openness and restructuring. Perestroika and glasnost, if I remember my history terms correctly.
You're exactly right. Gorbachev was a fascinating figure. He recognized that the system needed an overhaul. He wanted to modernize the economy, allow for more freedom of expression, and ease tensions with the West. On paper, these reforms seemed like a good idea, even necessary.
But history, as they say, is written by the victors, and considering the Soviet Union doesn't exactly exist anymore, I'm guessing those reforms didn't go quite as planned.
Well, it's rarely that simple. Think of it like this. Reforming a system as massive and entrenched as the Soviet Union was like trying to change the course of a giant cruise ship.
Right.
It takes time, and even small adjustments can have huge unintended consequences.
So what were some of those unexpected waves Gorbachev made? What were those reforms actually like for the everyday person? So Gorbachev's reforms, like trying to steer a massive ship in a new direction, but the reality on the ground was a lot more complicated than that, right? What were those reforms actually like for the everyday person?
For many, Gorbachev's reforms brought a sense of hope, a taste of freedom they hadn't experienced before. But for others, those same reforms fueled anxieties and uncertainties about the future. This was especially true in the republics outside of Russia.
That photo you dug up, the one with the Uzbek shopkeeper selling Bollywood films, that's a pretty interesting illustration of this, isn't it?
Absolutely. See, while the Soviet Union presented itself as unified, the reality was much more diverse. Those Bollywood films, they were a tiny window into a world outside the Soviet sphere. And as Gorbachev loosened restrictions on information and culture, those windows became impossible to close again.
So we've got this mix of hope, anxiety, and a desire for something different bubbling away. How did that actually lead to the Soviet Union's collapse?
It was a perfect storm, really. Gorbachev's reforms unintentionally unleashed forces he couldn't control. Nationalism surged, particularly in the Baltic republics like Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. Remember that economic burden we talked about? Many felt they were propping up the rest of the Union, and they yearned for self-determination.
And they weren't alone, were they? Didn't other republics start to see a way out, a chance to chart their own course?
Exactly. It was like a chain reaction. One by one, republics declared independence. By December of 1991, the Soviet Union was no more. It was a remarkably swift and mostly peaceful dissolution, a testament to the deep desire for change that had been simmering beneath the surface.
So what happens when a superpower goes on a clearance sale?
It was a period of immense upheaval. Shock therapy is what they called it. Rapid privatization of state-owned industries. On the one hand, it created opportunities for some, but for many, it meant economic hardship and uncertainty. The image you shared of Bank, that failed Russian bank, a stark reminder of the turbulence of that era.
A garage sale where not everyone got a bargain, and the ripples of that collapse, they're still being felt today, aren't they?
Absolutely. The collapse of the Soviet Union reshaped the geopolitical landscape. New nations emerged, each grappling with the challenges of forging a new identity and navigating a world suddenly without a bipolar power dynamic.
Makes you think, doesn't it? About the systems we consider unshakable today, the assumptions we make about the future. The Soviet Union's collapse is a stark reminder that even empires can crumble, and the course of history can change in the blink of an eye.
It certainly makes you wonder, what stories will we be telling about our time a generation or two from now?
Chills, honestly. Big questions to ponder, and who knows, maybe some future deep diver will be unpacking it all, just like we've done today. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.